Okay. You ready to go, Rabbi Isai? Okay. Baruch Hashem, we're in part 2 of our 3 tips for a successful Rosh Hashanah. Because all of us want to have a good Rosh Hashanah, we want to have a good year, a good Gebench Dior. So we spoke yesterday about the first 1.5 of those tips. What was tip number 1? To be an Ish Tziburi, to be somebody of the community. Meaning, Klal Yisrael will always be signed in the book of life and will go on for eternity. To the degree that I make myself part of Klal Yisrael, I will be necessary in that mission. And therefore it's important to understand what's the mission of Klal Yisrael. To align oneself in Klal Yisrael. Kol Yisrael, yesh lam chelik lo lam haba. All of Yisrael has a place in the world to come. The question is, could God forbid a person do something that takes them out of Yisrael, takes them out of... So I always have this amazing story. It stays with me very, very strongly. That I grew up in Toronto, a lot of Yidden in Toronto, and different people had different businesses that they were building in high school. And one of, some people got into legal businesses, other people got into other entrepreneurial endeavors. So there was somebody that I knew that he was very entrepreneurial and very good at what he did. And I remember he always had lower people on the scale that would take care of the masses, and then the suppliers, and then the ones who supplied those. So I remember at an early age he was always driving around in a Mercedes, black tinted, like a fancy situation, always tanned, like he was just getting out of the Bahamas or something. And sadly, no kippah, no tzitzis. But I would notice that he would come out of his car and like muscular, and there was a huge Star of David around his neck. Now, we don't condone anybody doing sins. That's not okay. And I'm sure when this person went home to his Sephardi Savta, she would say, "What do you do? Put something on your head." And oh, sorry, Savta, yeah, slicha. But I felt like that person was still in Yisrael. With everything said, as far as a person can get, he can get into that world of the gangster life. But the Magen David was bling. It wasn't. I'm sure it was pure gold. This guy was loaded. And his car was always very herbal, fragrant. I'm sure it wasn't potpourri. And it was wafting, but boom, right there. Yisrael. That a person says, no matter what, I want to be part of Yisrael. That's number 1. That's what the Rosh spoke about today also. Is what's my priorities? Where am I going? And the number 1 we should think about now is Yisrael. I want a vision of being part of this unbelievable Am HaNivchar, the eternal nation of Yisrael. That's what we said yesterday. Then we began step number 2. What was the second point? For successful Rosh Hashanah, bittul. What does bittul mean? It means there's going to be a guy beside you, annoying. There's going to be this one, stinky. This one's making noise like this. There's always going to be problems with your seats. Always. Someone's going to take, even right now, you see it's already happening. Everyone's getting their seats. Oh, and my seat, I already have a seat from the year. Now someone's going to pay. And you're going to see that a seat's not even going to be there, but it was on the chart, but they just, where's the chair? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. All of that is a test to know that on this day, you could be bigger than those things. Those are the things that determine your humanness. Your humanness to say, I don't need to let small things get to me. I don't need to let petty things get to me. What do you mean it's not petty? He took that extra piece of steak that night, a brisket. I need those gains. I have a protein intake that has to be met on the daily. And if I'm not up at 120 G's of protein, that's what people do, right? Around that?
1.6 grams per body weight.
1.6. Oh, it's much more technical than I thought.
1.8 to 1.2.
1.2 to 1.8 grams of protein per kilogram.
Per pound.
Per pound? Per pound? If the guy's 170, how are you putting that much protein in your body?
Yeah.
What are you thinking? What do you think? Your whole day is probably mashugging with like, I'm not getting enough G's. I'm not getting enough G's. Now, yeah, case in point. That guy's nuts. That's nuts. What is he doing it for? Why? What's the tachlis?
Gains, Rabbi.
Why? For what? If it's for Hashem, then Hashem definitely wants that your gains don't come at the expense of, oh, I'm going to get that guy for taking that extra piece of brisket. There's at least 50 G's on that plate. I didn't get to my quota. Oh, I'm going to let him out and give an evil eye, God forbid. Be very careful, which we'll talk about in a minute, about the way you look at Jews, the way you look at people on Hashanah. We'll get to that in a moment. Gittel means whatever happens, Hashem has a purpose. And it's to make you big. It's to make you big. They say a famous story that there was a tzaddik, and sadly his wife wasn't well, wasn't healthy, and it was before Yom Kippur, and they were all getting ready by the Suda Mafsekis, by the last part of Yom Kippur, to finish eating and then get to shul for Kol Nidre. And you might notice something very unique about the night of Yom Kippur is that the synagogue looks very different. Everything is white. All the men who are married wear their talises at night. We come to shul wearing our talises, and we come to shul wearing our kittles, our white kittel. Everything is white. It's very beautiful. Yom Kippur, the day of purity. And the kittel has many, many deep, deep things about why I put on a kittel. A kittel is the garment that you get buried in. A kittel is a very deep, symbolic garment. You get married in your kittel. And we wear it at night and the whole of Yom Kippur. Many people also wear Rosh Hashanah, Hashanah Rabbah, Pesach.
What stores, what do they do?
The talents at night, yeah.
They do kittel at night.
If you're married. If you're married. And this particular tzaddik came to shul without his kittel. And the Rebbe came out and saw, that he didn't have his kittel. Everyone wears a kittel, all the married people. And it was sort of, not a sore thumb, but it was obvious that, they write books on this stuff. Like the paninius of what a kittel means in Kabbalah on the night of Yom Kippur, and all sorts of amazing things. And he didn't have that. And after the davening, the Rebbe came over and the tzaddik just, everything like, okay, the kittel. And some of the other people in the davening also felt like, Nebuch, like he missed out on all these amazing things. And he said, Rebbe, my wife's not always well and healthy, and we were having the Sud Mafsekis, and things kind of got a little bit wild in the house, and then food got like everywhere and whatever, and my wife got just very flustered, and she took my kittel and just started cleaning up the whole house and all the mess with my kittel, like it was a shmata, like a rag. So it wasn't exactly. It's very smelly, very disgusting for me to put it on, but I didn't want to embarrass my wife, so I just said, okay, no problem. Thank you and have a good Yom Tov. And I came to shul without my kittel. And the Rebbe said, what you achieved by not wearing your kittel and taking care of your wife at that moment was much, much greater in heaven than all of our kittels put together. And everybody during these days are going to have their kittel moments for whatever that's going to be, or something's going to happen, and it's going to be your kittel moment. Am I going to lose myself in this thing, or am I going to be so much bigger than the whole story that's unfolding right now? Like was mentioned by the Rosh Shmuz, the guy is going to be davening and very annoying, and that's all your kittel moment. Be so much bigger than that. And you're going to achieve it. No, but what do you mean? It's so important to have the seat, and everything has to be a certain way, and the guy he's not saying the nicest things, and sometimes you can move your seat, but other times, no. You have to have your kittel moment and go way above it. Way above it. It will happen. That's point number 2. For successful Rosh Hashanah is bittul. Because really, on this day, God is proclaiming that I'm the king, and I want you to be part of this unbelievable kingdom. So give yourself to the kingdom. I made this kingdom for your good. I made this kingdom for your good. Pull up. Get involved. Be in the kingdom. Yeah? Point number 3. Tip number 3. On Rosh Hashanah, be very, very careful. To dan kol adam lakaf schus. To judge every single person favorably. Be very, very careful to judge every single person favorably. What does that mean, to judge people favorably?
Maybe he stinks because he ran out of shampoo and he didn't have enough time to apply.
Yeah, maybe he stinks not because he ran out of shampoo, because there was a stinkier guy. Mamish stunk. and he knocked on his door, Erev Rosh Hashanah, and said, can I, do you have any shampoo? And he said, I have like, 1 bottle, please take. And he just used the whole thing. And he just didn't have any left for him. And he was doing such a big chesed, Erev Rosh Hashanah, of giving a really stinky guy shampoo. And that's why. And then you say, oh, he probably didn't shower, he didn't take things seriously. Dan l'chaf schus. You know why? The simple reason is, God does everything measure for measure. Mida keneged mida. Tit for tat. The way that we do things down here, God will act upon us in the same way.
Does Hashem judge us favorably, even though He can see everything we do? So when we judge people favorably, we're like assuming the best, but Hashem knows exactly what we did. There's no way of judging favorably; it's just judging as it is.
Judging favorably, because no, God will judge favorably. When we judge favorably, God will judge us favorably. There's many things that we do that are a bit, sneaky, a little bit not so straight. So, yeah, it's a stretch. But if when we look at other people, we look at them with a good eye, God will look at us with a good eye. He'll judge us favorably and give a good psak, a lot good resources, a lot good things for us. Even though maybe it wasn't so, maybe we weren't.
He's looking at us with a good eye because we judge them favorably.
Correct.
But
Mida keneged mida.
yeah, fine, but there's no way of Him judging us favorably for our sins. Like we're just getting judged. We're just getting straight up judged.
No, when we've done things, but you spend your whole life looking at other people with a positive light, looking at them with a good light. So God says, I know you've done a lot of things, but I'm going to look at you in a good light. I'm going to look at you in a good light. A lot of this is found. I highly recommend people to learn Rabbi Nachman Reish Pei Beis Azamra L'Kai Be'oidi L'Kutei Maharan 282. Okay, look that one up. Probably the most famous Rabbi Nachman Torah, 282. Azamra L'Kai Be'oidi, about seeing the good, seeing the Nekudas Toivus, seeing the good in other people, even wicked people. Because it's impossible that wicked person can do one good thing in his life. So you focus on that one good thing, and then they start to feel, and you're actually judging him favorably, because on that one thing, he's not a Russia, right? That one thing, it's honest judgment, because you're focusing on that good point. And on that point, you help him identify with that point inside of him, and then he starts to be drawn towards more good and more good and more good. And the whole thing flips over. The problem is when we focus on the negative, it just makes more negative and more negative and more negative. A guy depressed for one day says, hey, let's go for 2. Let's go for 3, 4. But when a person's positive, it's just more positivity. Building on success. Dan l'chav schus. Look at things very positively. Especially people here, it's not so difficult. Look at all the amazing things people have done to come here. The choices that people have made. That's amazing. In a world that's gone meshuganin, this world has gone crazy. That people have made a decision to choose sanity, to consider what life is all about, why am I here, and to live with that truth of the clarity of why we're here. That deserves tremendous admiration. So it's not difficult to judge someone favorably who's making those decisions. So here it should be much easier in general to see people in a good light. They say a famous story from the Baal Shem Tov that C. Meyer says over every year. It's important to say over just to see a bit how intense our thoughts are about other people on Rosh Hashanah, how far the whole thing goes. So they bring a story, they say that the Kamarna brings the Maisa that in the Beis Medrash of the Baal Shem Tov on Rosh Hashanah, could you imagine being there? The Baal Shem Tov's shul on Rosh Hashanah in Mezhbich. So we're there, we're in Mezhbich, and in the middle of Pesukei de Zimra, one of the big, a lot of tzaddikim there, one of the big tzaddikim dropped his tabak pushke. You know what the tabak pushke is?
No.
Tabak, the snuff box. Tabak. He drops it on the floor, and another tzaddik, a big tzaddik, notices this other yid who dropped the tabak pushke. Pushke means like a little container of tabak. He notices that this other tzaddik went and bent down in the middle of Pesukei de Zimra to pick up the tabak. And he thought to himself, on such a heilige day, such a holy day, in the middle of Shemona Esrei, to pick up the tabak, in the middle of Pesukei de Zimra, to pick up the tabak, man, I feel like it's not so appropriate. At that point, the fact that he judged him, the tzadchov, negatively, made such a strong judgment in heaven that the person who picked up the tabak pushke was given a gezerah, Rahman al-San, that he was going to die that year. Immediately the Baal Shem Tov, who was at the front of the minyan, understood what happened in heaven, realized the gezerah, hanoira va'oyim hazeh, did an aliyas neshama, catapulted his neshama up to Shemayim, even higher, to try to break the gezerah, to try to stop this death decree from going through. But the decree was so eisen, was so strong, that the Baal Shem Tov could not mevatel it, could not nullify it. And he tried through Rosh Hashanah, through Aser Simei Tshuva, Yom Kippur, until Hashanah Rabbah, which that's the end. The chaysim b'toy chaysim, the seal within the seal. And at that point in Hashanah Rabbah, he was battling fiercely to nullify this decree. And in heaven they said the only way to nullify the decree is if the tzaddik who had the bad thought about the one who picked up the tabak pushke, if he himself realizes what he did, and then don him l'chaskus, judge them favorably, and says those words. And he only had until the end of Hashanah Rabbah. Okay? So the Baal Shem Tov realized at that moment that he had to do something. So the Baal Shem Tov took away the tzaddik who had the bad thought about the one who picked up the tabak pushke. He took away his moyach. Such a thing is sometimes tzaddikim can be poil certain things where all of a sudden it can take away your hasagas. And your hasagas mean like you don't understand Gemara anymore, like you just feel like my mind's not working. Now that doesn't mean you can show up to yeshivas and go, I'm sorry Rabbi, I couldn't learn, like the Baal Shem Tov probably took away my hasagas, that's why I can't come to morning seder. Sorry, I'm just, proud, it's out of my control. The Baal Shem Tov took my hasagas. So you can't do that. And I was like, oh, shucks. But there is such a thing. So, but this tzaddik, he realized that he wasn't hopping the Gemaras. So he decided that in order to get back his hasagas, he had to do something called yichudim. He had to start going more into certain Kabbalistic thoughts in order to arouse his thoughts again. And while he was involved in these yichudim, he was walking around just contemplating why Hashem made certain things in the Bria. Why did God make certain items that exist in the world? Like, what's the pshat in plastic? What's the why did God make that? What's the shot in a bumblebee? Like, what's up with that? Did God need to make that? And all of a sudden he got to tobacco. So what's the pshat? Why did God make such a thing called snuff, tobacco? He was just thinking, like, what's the uptight, tobacco? And he had this thought that it came to his mind, is that we know that in Kabbalah there's such a thing as that souls come down to the world again in reincarnations. And they can show up in different items and different objects. And it's very complex, and it's a long discussion. But a person who's a very coarse person will come back in more coarse elements. The worst is coming back, in like inanimate objects, because it's very hard for that person to get redeemed. Or animals, or plants and animals, but there's very, very high neshamas that come back in food, and then when somebody eats the food with the right intentions, you release that neshama. It's a whole complex system. The Arizal spoke about this at length. There's very high neshamas that they can't even come back into the world in such coarse things. They can only come back into the world in things that are used for smell. Because the power of smell is very pristine. It says that the power of smell goes right to your soul. Which is also why when you smell things, it's old. You remember it. It's like a very old sense. Even the word for smell, neshima, is the same letters as neshama. It's the same word. To smell and your soul is all the same thing. So, that God probably made tobacco, smelling tobacco, that certain very elevated souls should come back down to the world and reincarnate into tabak, and then have tzaddikim smell that, and that the beautiful smells, this is also flavored tobaccos, the beautiful smells of it would release those very lofty neshamas. And probably then he thought that was the reason why this Yid picked up his snuff box in the middle of Pesukah Zimra. He was probably trying to elevate those neshamas. And at the end of Hashanah, the Baal Shem Tov said that anybody should come to me. That was his custom to ask for questions, different things. And then this Yid came and he asked the Baal Shem, he said, what's with tabak? He says, Baal Shem Tov knew he's good. He says, you tell me. He says, I think because certain elevated neshamas and then lower neshamas and yeah, do you want to say something else? Yeah, and you should know, Rebbe, that I judged somebody not favorably. Yeah. And then he picked it up and then really probably he picked it up because he wanted to elevate this. And then the Baal Shem Tov told him the whole thing, that person was supposed to die. And that person said, oh my goodness. Do you think we understand any of this? These are very, very lofty things. But you know what we see from this, Maisa? Be very careful the way you look at people and don people, especially on Rosh Hashanah. There's so much more to say about Isai. We're going to have a part 3, I guess. My dearest friends, we should be Zoyach HaMamish, Bittel, Ish Tziburi, Dam Chav Schus, Ksiv Chsim Torah, good gewünscht hier, Amen. Kol Tov.